Imagine working at Google, earning nearly $300,000 a year, living in San Francisco, building the life that you always wanted, and yet still feeling that everything could disappear because of a lottery. Well, that was the reality of a Nepal born software engineer, Pati Karki. Well, he had talent, he had experience, he had a successful career, but none of that guaranteed stability. Everything depended on the H-1B lottery. Years after year, he waited. Years after year, he lost. Not once, not twice, but four consecutive times. Can you imagine the pressure? Your career is thriving. Your family is settled, but your future depends on a random selection process. Eventually, Karki he reached a boiling point. In fact, at just 27 years of age, he left Google and walked away from a salary that most people only dream about. Friends thought that he was taking a huge risk. Family members were worried, but he believed that he needed a different path. Together with his family, he launched a startup called Enthromind, basically an AI focused venture. And at the very same time, he pursued an alternative immigration strategy through O1 visa, often called the Extraordinary Ability Visa. Well, years of professional achievement suddenly became valuable. Eventually, the O1 visa, it was approved, and then came the green card. Today, Karki and his wife, they both hold permanent residency in the US. The story, it reflects a growing trend here. Many skilled individuals and immigrants, they are no longer willing to leave their future to change. Instead, they are exploring alternative pathways such as O1 visas, EB1A categories, and national interest visa. Well, for many immigrants, the lesson is simple. Sometimes the biggest opportunity arrives only after taking the biggest risk here. Because let's be honest, sometimes a visa rejection, it can become the beginning of an extraordinary success story. Imagine spending years building your life in America. You earn a degree, you get a job, you finally win the H-1B lottery system, you buy a home, you start sending your children to school. Your future, it becomes tied to the US. And then suddenly a policy clarification creates fear that your green card process, it could become more and more complicated. Well, that is exactly what happened when a recent USCIS memo sparked concern among thousands of H-1B workers, specifically Indians here. For years, skilled workers followed a very familiar path. They entered America legally, they secured employment, and eventually applied for permanent residency through adjustment of status while remaining inside the country. But, ladies and gentlemen, the new memo introduced language that alarmed many people. USCIS described adjustment of status as an extraordinary benefit rather than a routine immigration process. Well, suddenly, the workers they began asking difficult questions. Could they be forced to leave America? Would they need to complete the immigration processing overseas? Well, could careers and families be disrupted now? The fear, it spread rapidly. Immigration forums exploded with discussions. Lawyers received a lot of calls. In fact, technology workers, they began wondering whether years of planning might suddenly be at risk for them. For many Indian professionals, these concerns, they were specifically serious because Indians already face some of the longest green card waiting period in America. Many have spent years waiting. In fact, some face waits that stretch for decades. Fortunately, USCIS later attempted to calm the fear here. Officials clarified that workers contributing to the US economy and serving the national interest, they would likely remain on their current path. Well, that provided reinsurance, but it did not eliminate the whole uncertainty. Because when immigration rules become more discretionary, predictability decreases. And for families planning their future, uncertainty, it is often the hardest path. For now, the green card pathway that remains open, don't you worry. But this episode, it serves as a reminder that even highly skilled immigrants remain vulnerable to the policy change.